I say. So the Rebbe explained that the TVs, the natural conduct is comes from the level of chitzonius from above, and the hanhogen nisis comes from the level of pnimius from above. And the Rebbe is now going to explain further this idea of the idea of Pnimius and Chitzonius, the way it is connected to the idea of Rosh Chodesh versus the idea of Shana, because Rosh Chodesh is the idea of renewal. That renewal means a new hamshocha b'bchinas pnimius. Shana, which is the natural hanhoga tivis, there is just a repetition over there. Every year there is a cycle. By the Levana, even though there's also a cycle every month, but in the cycle there is a constantly changes because the moon starts up going bigger, bigger, bigger till the middle of the month, and it gets smaller, it disappears, and then it starts over again. So while it repeats itself, but within that there is a difference. That renewal, when it comes about the beginning of Rosh Chodesh, that's the level of Pnimis that is Nimshach. Let's look inside in Oisei. Va'al based on this that we explained the difference between the Anhoga Nisis, which is a Pnimius, and the Anhoga Tivius, which is Chitzonis. Yesh levayir hashaychus danhogos nisis, so we can explain the connection of this miraculous nisis leklolus ha'inyan de Rosh Chodesh, to generally the idea of Rosh Chodesh, that miraculous conduct is associated specifically with Rosh Chodesh. Who says that there is a connection? Because the pasuk says Shaharei Rosh Chodesh ניסן Rosh Hashanah lahanhoga nisis, because Rosh Chodesh ניסן, which is the Rosh Hashanah for the miraculous conduct, who Rosh Chodoshim. So that is the head of the month. Rosh Chodesh ניסן is the head of the month. So that means that Rosh Chodesh has a connection to the Hanhoga Nisis, the Etzem the Rosh Chodesh. And the Rebbe is going to explain now what is the connection between Rosh Chodesh, which is the head of the Hanhoga Nisis, to Hanhoga Nisis. What's the connection with Rosh Chodesh? Ubehagdim Habir b'Maimer Haben Ezra. First introducing the explanation in the statement, the saying of the Even Ezra. We quoted before. The Even Ezra says, Ein la levona shona klal. The levona has no year at all. As we said before, b'pashtas, what it means, the levona goes around every 30 days. It doesn't go a year. The levona every 30 days, there's no year for the Levana. Kasher ein la shemesh chodesh klal. Just like the sun has no month, there is no difference. Its cycle goes a whole year, so the sun doesn't have any month, and the month doesn't have any year. But the question is, still, the Lechaira would seem kivon shehiluch shneim. Since both of their cycles, the sun, the moon, and the sun, hu be'oifen shetomid choizrim v'sevim chulu, they're in a way that they're continuously circling and they're cycling in the same cycle over and over again. Mahu hachiluk beineim. So what's the difference between them? Sheshono shayeches l'chamo. Shono has a connection to the sun. The chodesh shayech l'levona dafke, and chodesh has a connection to the moon. Harigam halavona siveves v'eleches tamid kimikodim. But also the moon circles and keeps on going like before. The idea of a year, shana, that we said before, that it repeats itself. So the year after the cycle of the year, it goes back. But why do we say l'chayre, the moon also has a continuous cycle? It goes around all the time. But what's the difference? The explanation is very simple. In the cycle of the sun, there is no change, and there's nothing new. It's just the same. Ki'im shebechol shono choizeres v'soveves k'mekoidem. But rather, every year, it repeats and it circles just like before. Shana is Meloshin Mishnah. Shana comes from the language repeat. It's the same. Mash ein kein hilu chalavona hu ba'ofen sheyesh bo shinui v'chidush. As opposed to the cycle of the moon is in a way that there is a change and there's something new. Something new happens. Meshach yemei hachodesh, that during the duration of the month, mishtanis halavona mekatnus legadlus, that during the days of the month, the levana changes from being small to becoming big. There is a change. It's not a continuous same cycle, but there is differences during the days of the cycle, the days of the month. During the days of the month, mishtanis halavona mekatnus legadlus, it changes from being small to becoming big. Shebetchilas hachodesh harihu bekatnus. The beginning of the month, the moon is small. Umiyom liyoim, and from day to day, haleches v'godalo, she keeps on going and becoming larger, bigger, ad le'emtza chodesh, till the middle of the month. And then after the middle of the month, she keeps on going. Now she comes and gets smaller. Till the end of the month, then the moon totally disappears, but becomes so small. And after it totally disappears, you have a new levana. The levana appears anew. That's why we call it chodesh. We call it chodesh miloshin hischachus, a renewal. There is, while it repeats itself, but every month there's a renewal, and then there's change within the month. What does it mean, hischachus, a renewal? Shemekabeles oir chodosh mehashemesh. She gets a new light from the sun. There is the light which is always the moon gets from the sun, but the beginning of the month there is a hischachus, there is a new light that he gets from the sun. V'zehu inyan yichud shimsho. This is the idea of the union of the sun and the moon on Rosh Chodesh. When Rosh Chodesh comes, there is a union between the sun and the moon, this new light. Shehu yichud pnimi. That's an inner union. It's a union which is deeper. The whole month, it's a external union. But on the Rosh Chodesh, when there is the birth of the new moon, that is a inner yichud connection. For although the union of the sun and the moon is something which is continuous, all month there is a connection, there is a yichud, there is a union between the sun and the moon. Because Shaharei Tamid Mekabeles Halavana Oiram Hashemesh, because the sun, the moon always gets the light from the sun. But Mikol Mokoim, but nevertheless, even though it's always there's always a union with the sun, it gets its light from the sun. That is only an external union. When does it begin? When is the head? When does it start? That yichud, that on Rosh Chodesh, that's when it begins. She'oz hu yichud shimsho v'sihara yichud pnimi. At Rosh Chodesh, the union of the sun and the moon is a yichud pnimi, is an inner connection. It's an inner union. So basically, the sun and the moon are always connected. They're always a union because this moon always gets its light from the sun. But Rosh Chodesh, it gets a renewed light. It gets a new union, a union in a level of pnimis. And the Rebbe adds now in the bracket, Obenegeya liyichud pnimi, and as it relates to this inner yichud, when we say the yichud kuchabrichu shchinte, the shimsha v'sihara, the sun and the moon, in Alzeh Omru Razal, about that yichud, ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu nichnas b'Yerushalayim shel mato ad she'yikones b'Yerushalayim shel mayla. It says that the Eibishter does not go into Yerushalayim of below until he goes in to the Yerushalayim shel mayla. What does it mean going into the Yerushalayim shel mayla? Going into Yerushalayim means the yichud of Kuchabrichu Shchinte. Yerushalayim is the Shchinte, and going in is a Kodesh Baruch Hu, that's Kuchabrichu Shchinte. So the Kuchabrichu Shchinte are always connected. So when we says that the Eibishter goes first in to Yerushalayim Shel Maylo, that means the Yichud of Rosh Chodesh, that Pnimi is a Yichud. Because the other Yichud, the Yichud Chitzoni, is always there. But when the Eibishter waits for the Yichud, it means that Pnimi is a Yichud that happens on Rosh Chodesh. So now, the bottom line is, so we see that on Rosh Chodesh, it's a yichud pnimi. That's what happens on Rosh Chodesh. So this explains the connection between the Anhoga Nisis with Rosh Chodesh. V'zehu, because zehu gam hachiluk shebein Hanhoga Tivis ve'Hanhoga Nisis. This is also the chiluk between the Eibishter's conduct with the world in a natural way and the Eibishter's conduct in a miraculous way. As we said before, the natural is a yichud chitzoni, and the miraculous is a yichud pnimi. Shanhoga to mimi is the continuous hanhoga, the tivis nimsheches al yidei yichud chitzoni. That comes through a external yichud. The Eibishter is always connected to the world, always leading the world, always yichud, but it's chitzoni. Shu yichud tnidi, that is a continuous yichud. But v'hanhoga nisis, but when you have a miraculous hanhoga, that is nimsheches Al Yidei Yichud Pnimi. That extends, that is drawn down through an inner Yichud. When the Eibishter comes down and unites with the world in an inner way in which the miraculous Hanhoga comes down. Gilui Oir Chodosh, there is a revelation of a new light, Shenimshach Mibechina, that extends from a level Shalamayla Mishtalshalus Lagamri, which is entirely higher than Hishtalshalus. Just like Rosh Chodesh, we have the Yichud Pnimi. Here we have Hanhoga Nisis, which is a Yichud Pnimi that gets from higher than Ishtalshalus. Okay, so now, Valzen Nemar, HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chodoshim. So this Chodesh is the head of the Chodesh. Sherosh Chodesh, HaChodesh Hazeh, which is what? Which is ניסן. ניסן is the Hanhoga Nisis. The Hanhoga Nisis of this Chodesh is Rosh Chodoshim. That's Rosh Chodesh. Sherosh Chodesh she'inyana Yichud Pnimi. That Rosh Chodesh, which idea is that is when there is an inner union, the sun, which Shimsha v'Sihara in the beginning. Shaykh Hanhoga Nisis, that's connected to the miraculous conduct, Rosh Chodesh Shel Geula, because this was the month of redemption, which is the month of Yitzias Mitzrayim ניסן, which is a miraculous conduct. So the idea of Rosh Chodesh that brings that Yichud Pnimi is that which brings the Hanhoga Nisis, because there is a new Gilu, there is a Chidush in that connection. So even though this moon cycles the same all the time, but it's not the same cycle, there is differences. And the difference is that during the month, it's a Yichud Chitzoni, Rosh Chodesh, a Yichud Pnimi. That is the idea of Hanhoga Nisis. So therefore, HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chodoshim, that this Chodesh, the idea of Rosh Chodesh, has to do with Hanhoga Nisis of Rosh Chodesh Geula. But the Rebbe wants to bring out now, so it seems like the idea of avodah that brings down the new, or we learned before, that when the Eibishter created the world with the Tishrei, over there is the Hanhoga Tivis, the natural. That's Chofetz Chesed, that comes from the Eibishter alone. Hanhoga Nisis requires avodah of Torah mitzvahs. It says Eid Yalam and Haaretz. But the Pasuk says really that even for the Chodsh Hashanah, even for the Hanhoga Tivis, we also need avodah sa'adam, not only for the Hanhoga Nisis. Amnon vav adayin tzarich lahavin ma shekosu rishon hu lochem l'chodsh hashana. So the pasuk says it's not just the rishon because Hanhoga Nisis, but it is the first also for the chodsh hashana, which means that also the natural, the chodsh hashana, has to do with Rosh Chodesh itself. She'inyan ha-chodesh, Rosh Chodesh al-Geula, what are we saying? Ha-chodesh hazeh. This Rosh Chodesh, which is Rosh Chodesh al-Geula, shemoira al-ha-chidush, which points to chidush. We're talking about the Rosh Chodesh, which is chidush. Hanhoga Nisis, shabo al-yidei ha-chidush, da-avodah b'koyach, avodah k'chatzman, that we said, that miraculous Hanhoga comes through avodah. Eid Yalam min ha'aretz, we have to work. But here we're saying that Shayich Gam Lishana, we're saying Achodesh as Elochem l'chodshei hashana, that also to the year, also to the Anhoga Timidis, Shomer al Timidis veheder hashinu v'achidush, but the year points to the continuous, which is not changed, and there's nothing new in the cycle of the year of the sun. Anhoga Tivis shenikva b'tchilas habriya, that is a natural conduct which has been set in the Bria, and there's no Chiddush here, there's no Avodas HaAdam, there's no, the whole idea of Hanhogan Nisis is that the new Chiddush, the new Hamshocha comes through the Hanhogan Nisis of the person, his Avodah, B'koich Atzmai, in a way that brings down that new, but here we're saying that is Rishon Ulachem l'chodshei hashana, also for the Shana, also for the natural, there's also that level of his chadshus, the avodah of the person that brings down a higher level. And the Rebbe explains, because at the end of the day, even the natural creation that was created in the sixth day, Hanhoga Tivis, at the end of the day, even though it was created Kichofetz Chesed, but it still depends on the avoid of the Yidden. There's a chiddush there as well, as Rebbe will explain. What is the idea? The hine soif, because at the end of the day, the end, harikol ha'inyonim shavi hishtalshelus, all matters that involve tluyim ba'avodas ba'avodosom shel Yisrael. Everything hinges on the service of the Yidden. V'heim b'shvil Yisrael, and they are for the Yid, Hainu, which means shagam hanhogas tivis kvisha nikva b'tchilas habriya hi b'shvil Yisrael. Even this natural conduct, as it was set up in the beginning of creation, it's also for a Yid. We said it's also for a Yid. Uked isa b'pirush Rashi ala posik Bereshis Boro B'Gomer. The Pasuk, Rashi says on the Pasuk, in the beginning when Hashem created, it says Bereshis, Beis Reshis, B'Shvil Yisrael, Shenikru Reshis. So the world was created. Hanoga Tivis was also created for the Yidden. They're called the Reshis, Beis Reshis, Bereshis, and one of them is B'Shvil Yisrael. They're called the Reshis. V'zehu Masha Kosuv, and this is what the pasuk says, Im hamelech b'melachta yoshvu sham. They sat there, the Neshamas Yisrael were sitting there with the king in his work, while the king was creating the B'riya Shemayim v'Oretz, the Yidden were sitting there, yoshvu sham. B'amra Azal, so what does it mean they were sitting with the king? So our sages of blessed memories tell us that b'min nimlach who did Hashem consult when He created the world? That's the souls of the tzaddikim. That's why they were standing. They were with the king b'malachtai. They were with Hashem. So He consulted Shomer tzaddikim. So even in the beginning of creation, we said before is Chofetz Chesed, but the reason why the Eibishter created world was because of the Yid, because the Eibishter consulted with them. What does that mean? And that is, Sheis Boin and B'Neshamas Yisrael Kifi Sheyu Ba'osid, that He reflected on the Neshamas Yisrael as they will be in the future. He created the world. So that means that He consulted with them, that it is because of the Yidden that the Eibishter created the world. As the Rabbi Magid writes in their Torah, Shekadimas harotzin hoyo, that the will of Hashem that preceded the creation of the world was b'shvil shahoyu Yisrael tzadikim b'chol doir v'doir, so that there should be sheyu Yisrael tzadikim b'chol doir v'doir, that in order there should be Yidden righteous in every generation. Is vitzimtzem kavayachol b'hirosei. So Shem sort of restricted that shine, the intensity of the shine, commercial of mitzamtzim es sichloi, like for example, a father who would restrict his intellect, and then he speaks small things for his young son. He speaks small stuff, which means the father is in a much greater level, but yet to speak to his son, he restricts to the ability of the son. The Eibishter restricted the world to shine so that the tzaddikim should be able to take it. V'gam kol hamidus, and also all of the character traits, ma'asen narus noilodim b'ha'av, and also all acts of youthfulness, meaning playing with the child, are created in the son, in the father, because of the son. He wants to communicate, he wants to connect with his son, so he needs to contract, he needs to conceal and restrict the level. So the Eibishter saw all this in the potential, so that's why the Eibishter created the world for the Yidden, so that he can give them. So the difference is, over here, the son needs to be existing first, and then the father restricts himself to the level of the child. The Eibishter restricted himself before. Then the father can reflect on the son and to restrict himself to the level of the son. But with regards to Hashem, the future and the past are equal. And he, blessed, was delighting from the tzaddikim what will be in the future. And he restricted himself. So that was the way the Eibishter created the world, so that he could later on enjoy and have the tzaddikim do their actions based on his restricted level of what he came down. So what happens? But before the Eibishter created, then the light of the act of the tzaddikim was only in potential. And then later on. So the Hanhoga TVs also had the Yidden in mind, B'shvil Yisrael. But before, it was just what's going to happen later. And then when he chose Yaakov and his son and he gave us the Torah, then we need the Avodah B'koach Hasan B'poel. That means that in creation already there is the act of tzaddikim, but over there it's only the potential. But now you need the action. They need to actually do the mitzvahs. That's why, for this was the intention of creators. So what does it turn out? That also the order of the natural shono, totally b'avedosam shel Yisrael. It all hinges on the avodah vayid. Shezehu inyan. This is because the avodah vayid, because that's why the Eibishter restricted himself, is because of the avodah vayid. Shezehu inyan. The chodesh hazeh lochem. That is the idea of chodesh lochem. Mishabachar b'Yaakov ubonov chulu rosh chodesh shel geula. So what does it mean? Chodesh hazeh lochem. Shmachar rosh chodesh shel geula. This is the novelty of Matan Torah. Shah Torah yordo lemato ba'olam hazeh. That the Torah went down below into this world. Hainu shechodro gam l'toicha nyonim shalomata ba'olam hazeh. That it penetrated also into the matters of below in this world. Shegam Bechinas hanhoga tivis tluya ba'avidosam shel Yisrael davke. So that also the hanhoga tivis would also hinge on the avodah of the Yid. In the beginning, the Eibishter had in mind because it's going to be the Yid's avodah. But that was good enough lechatchila for creating the world. But eventually, the Eibishter wants us, when he created the world, that the Yid should actually do the Torah mitzvahs. And that is part why the Eibishter created the world. So it means that everything, why did the Eibishter create the Anhoga Tivis? It's also because the Avodah of a Yid. And what does it mean that the Yid brings down into the Avodah of Shana, into B'riyas HaOlam, into Olam Hazeh, to bring down the level, um, to bring down the level of what is above, that the Yid works to bring down even the natural avodah, not only the anhoga nisis, but also the anhoga tivis. And that's why everything that goes on, even though anhoga tivis originally was created on his own, but that was created for the avodah v'yid. And the avodah v'yid has to come down in the natural world to bring down the kavanah, to bring down the kavanah also into this world. This is the idea. Okay, we'll continue weiter over here to explain this, but we ran out of time, so we'll leave it over here. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
See you next time. Thank you very much.
Watch the